Welcome to Wine Soundtrack USA. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world. In 30 answers, discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Allison Levine, and today I am at the Blue Victorian Winery and Vézer family winery in the Sassoon Valley with winemaker Jacob Stuessy. Jacob, or Jake, welcome, and tell us about Vézer Winery and how that fits in with Blue Victorian, and tell us a little bit about the wineries.
All right, so they're both they're sister companies. The Vézer brand was the first brand that Frank established in 2003. He started with Zinfandel and Verdejo in the early 2000s. Started his own winery on site in, I think, about 2006, 2007. In 2008, we bought the Blue Victorian. And the wines on the Vézer side are always going to stay the same. There's the same cab, the same Petit, Syrah, the same names. Arlene, they're all named after his children, grandchildren, his mom. The Lost Letter flagship, which is named after his mom. And then the Blue Victorian kind of gives a different insight to the valley as a whole. So we kind of change varietals year in and year out. It's our way to showcase what the valley can actually do and all the diversity in Sassoon Valley.
Well, that's great. So are you working on exclusively estate fruit? And if so, how many acres do you have? And if you're sourcing any, are you sourcing from within the valley or outside?
Yeah, everything on both labels comes from Sassoon Valley. So estate acreage, we have about 48 planted right now. And we just planted 10 more in the last year, so we'll have that fruit all coming online here in the next couple of years. And then the people we source from Lanza's, Babcock's, Jeff and Selma, all people that we've been doing with for years, and we have a great working relationship within this valley.
So I know you mentioned Zinfandel and Verdejo and Petit Syrah, but how many different grape varieties are you guys growing and working with? And I wonder how many you can name off. And if it's a long list, you don't have to do the whole list, but how many in total?
I'll start with what we're growing. We're growing Verdejo. We grow Sauvignon Blanc, Cab Franc, Merlot, Petit Syrah, Zinfandel, Black Muscat. That's what we're growing now. Multiple blocks of Cab, multiple blocks of Merlot, sure. Multiple blocks of Cab Franc. A lot of those are on the new property. What we purchase is we've done everything from Charbonneau, Barbera, Mourvedre, Syrah, Val de Guy. I said Charbonneau. I know I'm missing something.
Yeah, a real range though. So a lot of diversity available here. And what's your total case production?
Typically around 5,000 to 7,000 cases a year.
And that's between both brands?
Between both brands, yes.
And where are your vines available? Are they exclusively direct to consumer, exclusively at the winery, or do you ship to any markets?
Typically, we don't really ship to any markets right now. It's all pretty much direct to consumer, but we are in a lot of local places around here, local wine shops, local restaurants. We do have an outside sales guy that keeps us going, Chris, and he keeps things keep moving in the Bay Area.
But people can buy direct to consumer and you can ship anywhere in the country.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's great. So we're going to skip over to you here and tell me, what is your first memory relevant to wine? What do you remember being introduced to, and how old were you?
My first memory being introduced to wine, I'll tell you a funny story. So I was 18 and I wanted to impress a girl, and I had a fake ID. So yeah, exactly. So I went to the store, and I went back to where she was in college, and I drove all the way back there with a bottle of wine. And when I went to the liquor store to see, I grabbed a bottle of Mondavi just because it said Napa Valley on it, because I didn't know anything about wine. We drank a lot of jug wine, Carlo Rossi, Burgundy. Back then, there was the one that I'd always say, we're from Iowa. I'm from Iowa. So me and all my friends, we'd always be like, the one that starts with C, the Cabernet. None of us knew how to pronounce it. So that was kind of my first. And I remember buying this bottle. It said Napa Valley. I saved the cork because I thought it was so damn cool. It was a synthetic cork too, Drank it in a cornfield because that's what you do in Iowa. Honestly, watching the sunset, no joke. So that was my first memory, like real profound memory with wine. And then my first memory of working in wine was when I started working, and I started out here in the deli actually, and the winery is just starting, and we're just getting to harvest.
Right, because Frank Vézer also owns a deli and other businesses in the area.
Yep, exactly. So the original was a taste room, so I started in the taste room and the deli next door. And then the first memory I have of working in wine was they said, "Oh, it's harvest time. You got to come up here. This is what you're going to go do for the next couple months." Oh, okay. And they gave me this big punch-down stick, a piquage, you know, and they sent me up on these bins out in the middle of the heat, and they said, "You need to punch these down 4 times a day." And there's 50 bins out there at any given time. And so that was my first memory of working in wine. And it's, yeah, no, I still have nightmares from it, honestly.
And how are those back muscles?
Oh, they got good real quick, you know? And balance, and my balance from not falling.
So now that you are a little more experienced from the cornfields of Iowa, and you've been, you know, studying wine and drinking wine and exploring wine, what was one of those memorable aha moments? What wine kind of opened your eyes to a region, to a grape variety, or even set you on the path to making wine? Was there that one aha moment?
Absolutely. 2009, I was working in Walla Walla at Burgevin Lane Winery, and we had a really good group of harvest interns. I actually had someone from Iowa who was a brewer. Then we knew some of the same friends. We ended up in Washington together, and so we linked up and clicked right away. And then I had another friend named Dylan York, who's still a dear friend today. And during harvest, Dylan is a chef, and he put together this really cool Vietnamese meal. And the people that he lived with, they were sommeliers, and so he invited a bunch of friends who all had this, you know, this huge glowing passion and love for wine. Mm-hmm. And I remember me and Andy were sitting here. He's my friend from Iowa, or the brewer, and we're watching these guys talk about Poet's Leap, which is Riesling out of Walla Walla, Washington State. And we are doing there's vertical of Riesling paired with these authentic Vietnamese food. Mm. And watching the way that everyone in the rooms, their energies, the things they were saying, how it tied in and glued to this they were, I didn't really have any clue what that was yet. To me, wine was just a job at the time. It was keeping me on, you know, keeping me up and getting money in my pocket, and I enjoyed it, you know. But I didn't have that connection with it, that love for that burning fire, like, you know, when you hear the Grateful Dead play for the first time or something like that, you know, you want to hear more and more and more, and that was that moment for me, and so. After that moment, and the funniest thing is I remember someone called out a descriptor, and they said, my friend Dylan said it, and he says, "Smells like the elastic on the inside of a baby's diaper." And I'm thinking, and he said, not the powdered part, but, you know, the elastic part. And I'm like, "Oh, yeah. And I'm like, whoa, dude. Me and Andy looked at each other, and he's like, we're just like, this is crazy, kind of. But after that, every moment that we had, it was wine. It was wine. And then came back down to California, and every moment that I had at nights was reading about wine, studying about wine, buying as many cheap bottles as I could afford at the time, and just trying to learn everything I could about it.
So if we were to come into your home and go into your cellar, and again, it could be bottles under your bed, it could be in a wine fridge, or maybe you have a storage unit, but what kind of wines would we find in there today?
Not much, because they get drank pretty quick. Quite honestly. Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot in there. Mostly when I go buy wine, I'm buying it to drink. I don't ever really store it. What I do, right now I'm in the phase I'm in is trying things that keep me engaged, that are just telling stories all upon their own, you know? So
is there something you opened recently that really drank really well and told you a little story?
Yeah, let me think about that one. Like, what was the last bottle of wine that I drank that blew me away? What was the last bottle of wine I drank that blew me away? Oh yeah, Jolie Leday. I had a Jolie Leday Pinot Gris not that long ago. That was amazing. Skin contact, I believe, had really great color. I mean, almost, it was pinkish, you know, looked rosé, but the depth and the textures and how it opened up over like the course of an hour was just magnificent.
Huh. So do you think there's a such thing as a perfect variety?
No. Nor do I think there's such a thing as a perfect wine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's your opinion on wine critics and scores?
They're for the they help to give someone a gauge that doesn't have maybe the information, or the knowledge to even know what they like themselves. And so if they can link up with a critic who maybe their tastes are in synergy or tied together, maybe it helps them. As far as my real thoughts on it, I like to hear what people say when they drink the wine, and those are the things that I kind of listen to and really put into context.
Absolutely, the consumer. So as a consumer, red, white, or rosé?
All.
Still or sparkling?
Still.
Yep. So that was easy. Now, you were just telling a story about being in Walla Walla and doing a vertical of Rieslings with Vietnamese food. Yeah. And obviously that's a really beautiful pairing. I'm wondering how you approach in your daily life food and wine pairing. Do you follow rules? Do you look for certain things that if you're picking this wine, you look for something in your food or vice versa? How do you approach it and how do you suggest people do it?
I have zero guidelines to it at all. What's opened is what we drink or what we have laying around or what we want to drink. If I go down to the store, I might go to the wine shop one day, go down to a wine shop, buy some cool wines, bring them home, and then go to the grocery store later. I'm not deciding it's never hand in hand. It's just sometimes it works, sometimes it don't work. Sometimes you finish all your meal and then you finish the wine if it didn't work out that much, I think as far as what I would recommend is just keep trying. I think with wine and food and the best thing is to do is just keep trying. The way to know more about wine, drink more freaking wine.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You want to know more about wine pairings? Pair more wine with more food.
So, if you keep drinking and you keep trying, and as you said, you like to drink. I'm not saying in an excessive amount, but you like to drink. But you got any tips for when you drink a little too much? Any hangover remedies? Any little secrets you've come up with in your years?
Yeah, whiskey in the morning. The hair of the dog. Good talk.
There's the advice. Some say water, you say whiskey.
That's right.
So for somebody who hasn't had the pleasure to taste Vézer family wines or Blue Victorian wines, what do you think they're missing out on?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think they're missing on a very unique region of California. I think you're missing out on... everyone's looking for these little gems still, and in California, the land to plant vineyards is shrinking, a lot. Everything that's been planted, Napa, Sonoma, they've been planted, they're just replanting, and so there's not a lot of spots up there. Sassoon is kind of this undiscovered gem, in my opinion, still. We're starting to get a lot more traction now. You're starting to see these wines come out now. You have Camus making the Grand de Reef and putting out a Sassoon Valley wine on a larger scale that brings attention to the valley. Mm-hmm. A lot of times with Sassoon, we see people labeling their wines as North Coast. It could be 100% Sassoon, but because the North Coast is considered Napa, Sonoma, Lake County, Mendocino, I believe Marin now too, and only Sassoon. The rest of Solano County is not included into that. So there is a differentiation between, and Green Valley also, Green Valley of Solano County, which is buds up right next to us, that is also considered in the North Coast. But everything outside of this little area, this 3 by 8 mile stretch, everything to the east of here, that's not considered North Coast, nor is it considered Sassoon. Because there is a striking difference as far as quality and what we're doing from here to what they're doing over on the other side.
Wow. So we're in Solano County, but that butts up right next to Napa County and a stone's throw. Yeah. And yet it's a hidden gem.
It's still a hidden gem, yeah.
So if space aliens were to land on your property right now, which of your wines would you want to welcome them with?
Verdeo. Yeah, Verdeo.
And I had the privilege to taste your skin contact Verdejo. You made 2 Verdejos, a traditional one and one with skin contact. Which of those are you thinking?
The traditional one, because I had the 20% of the skin contact into it. So I feel like it's more of a layered representation as opposed to one side, kind of one-dimensional or one full-on style. Plus, I only made 78 bottles, and I'd hope they'd want to buy some.
So every vintage tells a different story. You've been doing this for a little while now, and you've been studying. And being in this area, do you see variation from year to year? Or do you see nuanced variation? Do you see grand variation? What is your experience telling you here?
I think we, just like anyone else in the North Coast, we deal with the same variants. The one thing I think with this valley right now is I think there's been a lot of progress in clones we're planting, how we're growing, crop loads, everything we've been doing in wineries. Everyone around here has really, stepped up and really driving at this really high level right now, I feel. So I think that's probably the most that I've seen as far as why everything's improving. And we know it's kind of a collective effort, and everyone's always pushing each other, and we're always trying to push towards that same thing, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't see huge variance. I mean, we had 2020, which everyone dealt with problems in 2020. We didn't see a lot of smoke damage as like fucking Napa and Sonoma saw, just because of where we sat within projection of the winds and how the winds were pushing when the fires happened. I mean, we had fires right through here, right down the road from here, right by our main property, Frank's house and our original winery. We had fires within, I could hit a golf ball to where the fires were, and none of those wines that we tasted the other day, those were from that vineyard, and no signs of smoke. But that's not what can be said about Napa. So I think as far as the variants, we deal with the same problems as anyone in Napa, Sonoma, Lake is dealing with. And right now that, unfortunately, is the fucking droughts that we're dealing with and this absurd amounts of fires that we're having. And that's our biggest battle right now.
Yeah, absolutely. We're in a season now where flowering is happening and bud break. Are there any signs or predictors you look for that are going to tell you what a vintage is going to be like?
No. I mean, we can kind of see set, and we look for our counts early. We're looking for, obviously we're not having rain, and the wind might be a problem with shatter a little bit, but not much. Nothing really yet. We judge everything on taste. Me personally, I've had friends, some people, everyone has their own little tune-ins, how things that they do. I don't really have one of those. I play with what I'm given. So we're watching for counts, we're dropping to make sure that we're in our limits of what we want to be cropping, and we're making, just watching the vineyard. But at the end of the day, it is what it is, Yeah. So at the end of the day, I'm going to make what I'm given. And so at this point, once we have a chance to start tasting the fruit and really start looking at it and monitoring it, that's when we can start getting acclimated with it, understanding it, and kind of having a relationship with what's going on in the vineyard. That's what drives our decisions, honestly, as winemakers.
Sure. So, you're the winemaker. You set the tone, when you're going to pick your fruit, and when you're ready to pick your fruit, have you established any rituals for your team, or do you personally have any rituals that mark the start of harvest?
Yeah, we all take shots of whiskey out in the vineyard.
Of course.
On the first pick, whoever's working interns, harvest, the pickers, everyone on my side in vineyards, everyone's there. Yeah.
A shot of whiskey. Yep. So for a hangover or for the start of harvest.
Yep. And the end of harvest too. I like
Gotta
whiskey.
Round it out.
I like whiskey, honestly.
Apparently.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the first time that you sat at that tasting, the vertical with the Rieslings, and that there were words thrown out at you that seemed kind of weird. And now that you taste wine and describe wine, you understand a lot more of that. So maybe this won't sound so weird, but do you ever walk through the vineyards and talk to your vines?
Not to the vines.
Do you talk to your wine when it's in the barrel?
Possibly.
What do you say to it?
It's between us. It loses its energy if I go around and tell these things.
That's
because
true.
I think wine is they're a relationship. It is a relationship. There's one thing to make wine. It's one thing to make wine with fucking love. And when you make wine with love, there is a weird connection. And I don't know. It's something that's happened honestly more in the last few years, I think, than in years before. Maybe because in years before, I thought the wines were always in front of me, and maybe sometimes now I feel like I know where I'm trying to get them to. And so now that we have this understanding of who's in charge, maybe that we have a different relationship now. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I think that only comes with experience and time. And then, but yeah, no, I'm going to keep that between us.
Okay. So when you were a little boy, what did you want to be when you grew up?
A baseball player or an athlete or some sort, like every kid, emulating I'm a Cubs fan, so Mark Grace and Ryan Sandberg and Andre Dawson. I mean, that's be out in my front yard playing that with my buddy every day, you know? That's what we wanted to be. And then at some point I didn't know what the hell I wanted to be.
And then now you're a winemaker.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that, this one story I tell a lot of people is that, you know, I went through a lot of time in my life where I was just, you know, wandering, and it's good. I don't have any problems or qualms with it. What I always tell people is when they put these tests in front of you when you're 16, 15, 16 years old, they make you take these tests. And then they tell you, oh, this is what you're going to be good at. This is what you need to go to college for. This is what you need to start looking at. And mine was accounting, because I'm really good with numbers. Math makes sense, so mine was accounting. And so I actually went to college to be an accountant at first. I got kicked out, didn't last very long. And it's frustrating, as you know, when you're that young, you don't know what your life's be, but especially at that era, I think it's a little more different now. But I know I don't raise my son like that, but we don't know what we want to be. And out of all those tests that I took, not one of them said I could make fucking wine. You see, you know what I mean? So it's they make life look like in such an easy picture, like a just digestible thing that you can just take on. But there's so many opportunities and so many ways that someone that's looking for purpose, passion, love, that they can find it if they know what they want to be and they just go seek that out themselves. It doesn't have to come through an education. It doesn't have to come. It comes from love and passion and hard work and fight, honestly. Mm-hmm. So, but they don't tell you that. And back in Iowa, they sure as hell didn't say, "Oh yeah, you could go make wine, or you can make beer, or you could do this, or you could be a professional drinker for your living." It wasn't even a thought process. It was like, you a fucking nurse? Or are you gonna be an accountant? Are you gonna be, which one?
I grew up in Los Angeles and nobody told me the wine industry was an option, so I understand.
Exactly.
But, I think that's a really interesting thing when you say, because you were good at math, and that's so much of what this industry is. It uses creativity and artistic ability, but also math and science are really important. So when you're not making wine, how do you spend your free time?
Family, hanging out, listening to music. Just a lot of time with our family. We spend a lot of time with family.
Mm. And do you have a favorite band or style of music?
I love music. It's as important to me as wine is, honestly. My favorite band, it goes on forever, but The Dead is where I'm at, yeah.
Ah. And if or when the Cubs win a championship, because you said you're a fan, I know you already have one, but the next time they win one, which of your wines would you want to give them to celebrate?
La Salette. For sure, La Salette.
And describe that wine.
La Salette is our flagship wine. It's named after Frank Vézer's mom. We started it back in the day. It was always been our flagship. It's kind of evolved through the years to be just more or less our highest end reserve Petit Syrah. It's always done with Petit as the base, main base, normally around 80 to 85%, and then about 5% of our estate Cabernet Sauvignon, and then our highest end Zinfandel that we pick out. We pick this stuff out at the crush pad. Honestly, they're our favorite bins, and that gets pulled off to the side just for La Salette.
Ah. So the Cubs better win.
I know.
Again. And when you're planning a romantic evening for you and your girlfriend, or you and your barrels, I'm not sure.
It's not that weird. There's just a couple taps, okay?
But what sort of wines do you like to open to set the mood of romanticism with you and your girlfriend?
Champagne, then. Uh-huh. Yeah, champagne, then, for sure. Sparkling always does the trick. Sparkling rosé does the trick even better. Uh-huh. But champagne, honestly, my girlfriend loves sparkling wines, and I'm not big into sparkling, but I've definitely learned to appreciate it more, and we've been looking more into champagne and out of the box, as opposed to just some of your traditional lately. Mm-hmm. Is what we've been kind of into. And then red wine, she's not a big white wine drinker, so she loves red wines. And the funny thing is about when you're drinking so much with someone else, your palates, they start to tend to become linked in or synced up. So most of the time what I like is, we always typically like the same wine. So
I love it.
We'll be looking for Grenaches and Syrahs and Mourvedres, more French styled wines.
Mm. Yeah. And, you've given some good nuggets of information along the way in this chat, but I'm wondering if there's a piece of advice someone gave you along the way that you really carry with you, whether it's how you want to live your life or how you approach your work or anything?
This too shall pass. My grandmother told me it in some of the harder moments of my life with her or with me, and being that beacon of hope and strength that she is, she'd always look at me and just tell me this too shall pass, and that no matter where the fuck you're at, whatever you're going through, good, bad, indifferent, it's fleeting, and it's never going to define you as long as you don't allow it to. And so when you just keep pushing on, knowing that this is just another hurdle or this is another peak or another valley, knowing that, it puts things into perspective and allows you to just keep grinding and moving forward, no matter what it is, and not getting comfortable either. Because a lot of people get comfortable and that shit passes too.
Yeah. So when you look back at your career, what would you say is one of your proudest achievements to date?
Today.
Well, today?
No, today. I mean, yeah, just this continual grind and continual improvement, honestly. I'm my worst critic, worst enemy, hands down. Blemishes I see so big, and so just to keep fighting and to get these wines and this is where I think we've gotten them to as a collective effort, I think is achievement in of itself. And I think there hasn't been one particular. I think every day, it's like right now, honestly, is that moment.
That's great. That's beautiful. And if you could give our listeners a little piece of advice, what would you want to share?
As far as
whatever.
Anything.
It could be about wine or it could be about life.
And live your life and love it, man. Make life is good, embrace it and cherish it because it's a beautiful thing.
So complete this sentence for me. A table without wine is like?
A table without wine is like... A table without wine is like... Day without sunshine.
Nice. Although it would probably be a table without whiskey is like a day without sunshine. And now I want you to imagine this situation. We're sitting around a table. We've got Vézer family wines sitting on the table with us, and there's an empty chair at that table. Who would you want from any walk of life, living or deceased, famous or personal, would you want to drink a bottle of your wine?
Didier Dagenot. Yeah.
Like that. Winemaker. Amazing winemaker. Absolutely. So we're almost to the end. You're almost there. 3 wines you would take to a deserted island.
3 wines I would take to a deserted island.
Your last 3 wines.
My last 3 wines. Definitely, I won't even say producers. I'll just say regions, because I think inside the regions,
there's too many producers.
There's too many producers, and I don't really have enough. But I know that if those were the regions I had to finish off with, that'd be good. Sancerre.
Okay.
Barolo, and probably California. A Napa Cab. Yeah, a Napa Cab. Yeah.
Okay. So. Here's the thing we do at the end of Wine Soundtrack is we play a little game, which you have no idea about, but you're going to be really good at this because it deals with your other love, music. So wine conjures up a feeling inside of us. It makes us feel a certain way, and we have a different mood for every wine we drink. And music does the same thing. So I'm going to pull out a few of your wines, and I want you to tell me what kind of music it either makes you think of or you'd want to be listening to.
All right.
So let's start with your Verdelho.
Verdejo.
And you can be general in a genre, but I know you as a music fan probably are going to get really specific.
Break it down to something. Verdelho, I'd probably say like maybe like White Stripes.
And what about your skin contact Verdelho?
That'd be like Zeppelin.
I like that, yeah. Your Petit Syrah.
Pink Floyd.
Zinfandel.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's got to be a little more raw and rustic. So, maybe like Blind Melon or something like that.
Okay. And your Zinfandel. Oh, wait, it's not Zinfandel. Sorry. Your Cabernet.
Ooh, that's a great one. Let me think about this for a second. I'm gonna say like Stones, honestly, something like that.
And I'm gonna jump back into your rosé.
That's something a little softer and more summer, so something acoustic. Let's say like Ben Harper.
And last but not least, your flagship wine, your Petit Syrah Reserve La Salette.
Yeah, La Salette. Well, just because it's purple. Actually, I'd obviously say that's Zeppelin. That's more of a Zeppelin. It's got the rages of, like the thank you, so beautiful and soft and loving, to the bold styles of, like no quarter that just shows zero quarter and no reserve or restraint. So it can range in all those, right? And all that range as far as what it is. It's raging, but yet at the same time it's soft and delicate. So yeah, that's for sure. That'd probably be Zeppelin. I'll take that one back, yeah.
Okay. Do you want to give Zinfandel a different one?
No, I think Zinfandel was that was Whole Cluster.
Oh, Whole Cluster,
That was Whole Cluster.
Right, sorry. Petit Syrah in general gets Led Zeppelin.
Yeah,
just different songs for the reserve and stuff.
Yeah, let's say that.
Well, Jake, you have done a great job. You've been really fun to talk to. I have a final two-part question for you.
All right.
First part is, what wine region in the world is at the top of your list to go visit?
France. If I went to France, it would be Loire because I realize how the country's set up. I've never been to France. It's where I want to go. I want to go to Loire. I want to go down just to see Bordeaux, just so I can say I have. And then on my second trip would be Rhone, just stay in Rhone the whole time. Yeah, the whole time. The whole time. Yeah.
Never leave.
If I had it my way, yeah, maybe. 8 years when my son's 18, or 19, that's when.
And last part is, if people want to come visit you and taste your wines, how can they find Vézer Family Wines?
Come out to Sassoon Valley. Right down I-80. If you see Jelly Belly, you hang it right, or Budweiser, hang it right to the north on Sassoon Valley Road, and you'll hit Blue Victorian. Right down the street, we have Make's Corner. But yeah, just come on to check out Sassoon Valley. It's just anywhere around here. It's really accessible, and it's really booming right now. So come check it out and see what we're doing out here. And
the Blue Victorian is open. Are both places open 7 days a week?
7 days a week, and they have the same hours. I believe weekends, the hours are 10 to, 7. I think Make's is open till 7. Both might, honestly, but during the weekdays, it's 11 to 5.
And so there's the Blue Victorian where you can taste both wines, and then Make's is a little hop-in corner here in the Sassoon Valley, and there's a tasting room there, the Vézer tasting room.
That's correct. And they both have different wines, and when you come in to taste one, you get to taste at both places. So you just go from one spot down to the other. It doesn't matter which one you start at. You go to the next one after that.
Well, Jake, thanks so much for joining us on Wine Soundtrack. I hope you had fun.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack USA. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.